Hello, everybody. Welcome to the online LSE Festival, and welcome to this session, which is how to do good for and create social impact, which is part of our Skills for a Fast Changing World series here at LSE. We're really delighted to have all of you with us, and while we're waiting for everybody to arrive, please do think about just telling us in chat where in the world you're coming from. It's always really wonderful to get a feel for that. Great. It's really stunning to see this global presence at LSE. Really fantastic. Okay, we shall get going. I'm Jonathan Roberts. I am the teaching director at LSE's Marshall Institute. I'm also the course convener on LSE's online certificate course, Social Entrepreneurship, and I lead our master's program in social business and entrepreneurship, also at the Marshall Institute. I'm going to talk for about 35, 40, 45 minutes about some skills around social entrepreneurship, about how to do good better. After that, I hope to have a little time to answer any queries that you might have about this topic. So at any time, please do feel free to use the Q&A box in Zoom to send over your query. I can't guarantee I'm going to answer all of your questions, but I will try my very best. If I don't answer you immediately, that's because I'm storing it up until the end. So please do have those questions coming at me. Okay, let me get some slides up to help us on our way. There we are. So let me start by invoking one of the founders of the London School of Economics, and that was the Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw. And George Bernard Shaw said, you look at the world and you ask why. I dream of things that could be, and I ask why not. And that sense of imagination, of dreaming about how we could create a more socially just, a more climate friendly, a better society is what drives so many of us. And people who put that into practice, those dreamers who try and enact this vision, we call them change makers, we call them social activists, we call them social entrepreneurs. But doing social change, getting those dreams into practice, is a really hard thing. And let me just begin by telling you a short story. Some of you may know it. It's about play pumps, and it's been written about very well by a philosopher called William MacAskill in his book, Doing Good Better. And the story is this. There was a marvelous invention. When children were spinning round on a roundabout, this would pump up water. And this was potentially seen to be a solution to the problem of pumping up water in sub-Saharan Africa. A social entrepreneur bought the patent for this. And in fact, millions and millions of pounds were invested in this remarkable technical innovation. The only problem was that in practice, it didn't work very well. In order to pump that water up from the ground, you had to keep that kinetic energy going at a fast pace for a considerable time. And of course, children don't play like that. They get on it, play for a while, and get off again. So unfortunately, it was the mothers in these villages, the women, who we have been trying to help, who ended up having to push this roundabout round and round to draw up water. And you can imagine how undignified and difficult that was. Furthermore, the roundabouts would break down, there weren't parts available to fix them, And soon you had this unfortunate vision of roundabouts with weeds growing on them, not being used, other cheaper methods of pumping being used in their place. Now, it's very easy to be wise after the event, and I have the greatest respect for the people who tried to do this. And they have since changed the way they implement these products, and it's working better. But mistakes were made here. And it's an example of good intentions, not well implemented, not creating social impact. So what I'd like to do today is to see if we can avoid some of these mistakes while putting our dreams into action. So the 4 components I'm going to look at today are these. Understanding a social problem. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on that. I'm going to introduce you briefly to some tools of the social entrepreneur's trade. I'm going to talk about what sort of organization we should form. That's a vital decision for anybody who is going into this field. And finally, the vitally important element, how do you know you're making a difference? How do you measure your impact? And across all these 4 dimensions, there are some principles going on here. We're trying to bring the rigor of social science into this field of dreams, into this field of private action for public benefit. To some extent, we're trying to blend the techniques of business with the techniques of social purpose. Let's see if we can do social purpose better with some learning from how business does it. Not uncontroversial, and we will talk more about that. And a third principle is this: we don't do this top down. We do this always co-creating with the users whom we are trying to help. So those are our guiding principles as we go through this session. First of all, let's consider our understanding of a social problem. I'm sure if you're attending this session, many of you may well have an idea for solving a social problem. And controversially, I'm going to say, stop right there, because the idea does not come first. What comes first is truly understanding the social problem that you are trying to fix. If you've done that already, then I take it all back, go ahead. If you haven't, really consider the problem. Social problems are complicated. They're more complicated than trying to make money in a profit-making organization. Now, I know that's hard. I know it's complicated, but social problems are more complicated than that. And here are some of the reasons. First of all, what is our bottom line here? What is the objective we're trying to achieve? What is good health? What is good education? These are contested and controversial. If you ask different people, they will have very different answers. So being very, very clear about what your key objectives are and how you might measure them is a very, very important first step. No clarity about the bottom line. The second point is that there are complex structures of cause and effect in social problems. So to give you a quick example, let's think about knife crime in London and in other cities by males, a common problem. So what do we think the cause of that is? Could it be gangs? They're almost certainly implicated in this. Could it be family breakdown and a lack of male role models for young people? That's possible. Could it be weak policing? Could it be policing that is too strong? Could it be policing which is discriminatory against certain communities? And therefore, is actually racism part of this story? Is it government policy? Is it shutting up youth clubs? Is it actually problems of a lack of jobs in a particular area? Are the schools just not doing their jobs properly in educating these young people? So you immediately begin to see that this is an extremely complex set of interactions in this social area. And you have to have a great deal of clarity in understanding what I call the point of inflection. What is your precise place in this ecosystem? How are you going to influence these complicated systems of cause and effect? how are you actually going to identify that you are making a difference? The third complexity of a social problem I've already begun to allude to, and that is there are a vast number of actors in this field. There are political institutions, there are state agencies, there are often profit-making organizations, non-profit organizations, there are families, there are campaigning groups. The list is endless. And in order to understand how you are going to make a difference and what the response will be to your endeavor, you need to be very clear about what the system is around the particular social problem you are trying to address. And one final, very complicated problem, which is very rarely referenced, and that is what actually is your definition of social value? How do you understand a good society? Any decision about a social intervention has some moral consequence, and it has some moral meaning, but often that is typically unstated and unexamined. I've got a couple of questions here. There are many more that we could ask about value. So is your aim to help as many people as possible? We would call that a utilitarian approach. Or are you going to help the most vulnerable, a social justice approach? Is the redistribution of power important to you, a more egalitarian approach, very significant when we're talking about campaigns such as Me Too or Black Lives Matter? Most social interventions will have some assumption along these lines, even if it is unstated. So again, before you attempt to implement your social intervention, think very carefully. What am I trying to do here? Who am I trying to help? What is my understanding of a good society? So that's about understanding a social problem. The other thing I would like to draw your attention to is how we know about a social problem. What is informing our decision making when we create an idea and when we put that idea into practice? Here is a piano keyboard. The question is, why are there so few female concert pianists? And it turns out that there is, according to a very, very good book, Invisible Women, that there is a very simple answer to this, that the piano keyboard is too big for 90% of female pianists, and it causes pain and injury to attempt to use it. And what's the reason? Well, quite possibly the reason is that the piano keyboard was designed by men for men. Whether they deliberately or unintentionally left out women, I'll leave that to another day. But the important point is this: how you create a product, how you create a social intervention really does depend on the knowledge that you have at a given time. So beware that you might be in some sort of bubble. You might have some sort of particular experience, particular problems if you're coming from a position of privilege and you have the resources to change something, but you may not have the knowledge to change something. So how do we get around that? How do we get around this problem of knowing? Well, here are a few tips for gathering knowledge around your social problem. The first is place the experience of the user right at the center of everything you do, but in particular in how you gather knowledge. Go and listen. Listen to the users and communities that you want to help. What do they need? We're not saying, this is what I think you need. We're asking them, what do they need? What have been their experiences? And in fact, do they have some of the answers we're looking for? We're not imposing our idea. We're looking to see whether they themselves have particular insights which could help us create a solution. So this idea has become familiar in the term lived experience. We're engaging with the actual experience of the users, whether they are disadvantaged because of poverty or disability or some other situation. However, we mustn't just listen to the user. We also must be aware that there is a lot of knowledge about social problems, and it is gathered in universities and in think tanks and in professional bodies. And it is very important to engage with the current body of knowledge as well. What do we already know about this problem? Has my idea actually already been tried? Was it tried in a different context and therefore it's fair enough for me to try it in another context? Or actually, have we tried it and we know it doesn't work? And a lot of the time we do see in this field people just doing the same thing again and again because they've come out of, say, the business world, have no knowledge of the current body of expertise, and are just doing the same thing again and again. So some awareness of the current body of knowledge. And finally, take time to map the ecosystem that you are working in. What are all the actors and institutions involved? What are they doing? Where in particular will be your inflection point? So are you going to create a new product, a new app? Do you want to repair something in the supply chain, which is affecting the livelihoods of farmers in South America? Or do you want to do something quite different, like campaigning for policy change? Do you think that the only way forward here is actually to change the law? Your understanding by going through this process of challenging your own knowledge, challenging your own sense of value, mapping the ecosystem, listening to the user, this will all help you understand where is my inflection point? How can I solve this social problem? And on that basis, you can then begin to develop your idea. Okay, so for me, understanding is very, very crucial. There's a quote which is attributed to Einstein. I have no idea whether it is from him, which is along the lines of, if I wanted to save the world, I would spend 95% of my time investigating the problem and 5% resolving it. And that's very much how I feel about social problems. That is the order of things. Then when we come to the tools of the trade, it gets a little bit different for reasons that I will explain. The first tool of the trade that I want to draw your attention to is something called a theory of change. What a theory of change is a slightly grand name for formally mapping out how you think your idea is going to work. And I mean formally and thoroughly. What are all the inputs going to be in terms of resources, people, partnerships? What are the activities going to be? What do you predict are the outcomes, in other words, the difference that you will make? And what is the impact, by which we mean long-term sustainable effects which are undoubtedly attributable to your intervention? But on top of that, what might be the possible unintended consequences, the side effects? What might be the things which will stand in your way? What might be the things which will help you? What are the key assumptions that you're making? So we combine all this in a very, very formal and well-structured and thought through theory of change to explain why we think our idea has a chance of being successful. And on that basis, we can create indicators, perhaps at each stage, to judge how well we are actually doing. So that's an important step. It's a step from our understanding of the social problem to our idea and formalizing our idea, giving us the possibility of understanding whether we're making a difference. The theory of change. There's a lot of information about theory of change on the internet, so do have a search for that. Now, I've stressed the importance of taking time to understand. Now I'm going to stress the importance of moving quickly. And this is the idea drawn from business studies of entrepreneurship, that you can do something called frugal innovation. You can test really quickly the assumptions around your product or your prototype. And that is what did not happen with the play pump. They moved too quickly, installed it in too many places, spent a very, very large amount of money before they understood it was not working. So what we suggest here is you prototype and you test very quickly, and using your theory of change, you understand what are the key assumptions here. How am I assuming that people will respond or behave? What am I assuming about this technology? And then you do tests to see whether they work. And if possible, you will do this again, involving the people you are trying to help. Have them as partners in this process. Involve them in the testing. Is this actually working for them? Again, is it what they need? So this process of frugal innovation is very valuable. And something to stress here is that it really is okay to fail, provided we've done our best. Social change requires risk-taking. One of the problems we have in our societies is that governments don't want to take risks, and you can understand why. If they take risks and they don't work out, then it's all over the newspapers. It's not good for the next election. In the world of private action for public benefit, our job is to take risks to create social innovation. But the task is to fail swiftly, to learn very swiftly that what we're proposing is not going to work before we've invested millions. Also, crucially, to learn from that failure so we can inform our future activities, so we can inform the activities of others. My final tool of the trade, and this is a very selective sample, there are many tools of the trade I could have referred to, but my final one is, I think, a very crucial one. Much of what I'm saying in this presentation is about rigor, robustness, being scientific, but we also have to be storytellers in this field. You could have a really good, robust, rigorous idea full of understanding unless you can communicate that idea with a persuasive narrative. You won't receive the funding and support you need to get it off the ground. So whether you are making a case for a grant to a foundation, whether you're making a really intimidating 10-minute pitch to profit-making investors, whether you're seeking partnership with government, you've got to be able to tell a really compelling narrative about your idea and why it will work. And it is surprising how many non-profits and how many charities do not create that narrative for themselves. Okay, so that's the tools of the trade. I'm now going to move to a very significant and challenging area, which is you will almost inevitably want to form an organization to put your idea into practice, whether it's campaigning and advocacy, whether it's a new product, a new service. There are a few moments when you might not. Social movements are on the borderline of organization and non-organization, but in principle, you will want to create an organization for impact. Now, this is a very simplified diagram of some of the options for you as you are creating an organization. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of finding the right organizational form. If you commit, for instance, to a charitable non-profit, you can't row back on that. You can't turn a charitable non-profit into a profit-making company, or at least it's extremely, extremely difficult. So choice of organizational form is very, very crucial. So let's look at these. On the extremes of this diagram are more conventional organizations. On the left-hand side, I have the corporation, the profit-making corporation. However, I'm acknowledging that there are a number of corporations who appear to have some sort of social purpose. It's not their primary purpose, they're still trying to make money, but they appear to have some sort of social purpose too. Examples might be Patagonia, it might be Unilever, and I'm going to give you another couple of examples as we go along. On the right-hand side, we have a traditional non-profit, which is getting its funding from philanthropy. It's not engaging in any commercial activities. It's the conventional charity as we know it. One thing to flag up about the conventional non-profit is if it's getting all its money from philanthropy, often that makes life very difficult. If you talk to the chief executives of these sorts of organizations, they will spend most of their time trying to raise funds year on year, every day. They would say 24/7. It's a real battle. There's a real problem of insufficient funds in these organizations, which I will come back to. And then in the center, we have a very interesting emerging group of organizations. Some of them have been around a long time, but there's been an acceleration in the last 10 to 20 years. And these we call social enterprises. They are hybrid organizations which are merging some sort of primary social purpose with commercial activities. And they range from a non-profit organization which is engaging in commercial activities, the trading non-profit, to a social cooperative. So in other words, an organization with some sort of social intention, but where it is run by the employees or by the customers, say parents running a childcare center, or it might be run by the whole community in some sort of shared ownership manner. Then more controversially, we have organizations which are set up as profit-making organizations, but which suggest that they have a primary social purpose. Controversial whether we should call them social enterprises. I have got for-profit social venture there. But what I am going to suggest to you is that any of these organizational forms might be a place to create social impact. So if you did go and work for Unilever, for instance, you could have a considerable impact on climate change and other climate problems, problems of waste. You could have a really strong effect on hygiene and health in some emerging economies. So there is the potential to do social good, to create social impact in each and every one of these organizational types. But the question is, given what your idea is, given the environment you're working in, given the people you're working for, what is the right fit between organizational form, organizational structure, and what you want to do? And that can be a real challenge. I've got a few small ideas about how you can begin to think about this, but it is a complicated area. So here are a few questions for you to think about. A first question is, can economic value be captured? What do I mean by that? I mean, basically, can you charge people for this product? If the answer is yes, you can, then you have the potential to create a commercial business model. Note that a commercial business model doesn't mean you're a for-profit organization. You can be a non-profit organization and have a commercial business model. But the first step is this: is it possible to capture value by charging the users for the service you are operating? If the answer is no, and it so often is in this field, then you clearly have to be a non-profit non-trading organization relying on philanthropy. And a good example of this is a great organization called Partners in Health. Many of you may know it, which has done remarkable work to restructure health systems in Haiti, Rwanda, Peru. And there is no chance of a commercial relationship in those contexts. They're dealing with very, very disadvantaged people, very, very complicated health issues. Philanthropy was the only way forward for that organization. They have increasingly begun to work with government, and that is an option for non-profit organizations which are not commercial to create grant relationships or even contracts with government in order to push through your social mission. But just a caution there, governments can be quite overpowering. If you do go down that route, are you in danger of losing your independence over what you do? So now we have a choice if we are able to charge people in some way for the services we provide. Do we do it on a non-profit or a for-profit basis? Well, there are disadvantages, as I've said, to being a non-profit, and sometimes these are overlooked. Understandably, we may want to reach the non-profit organisational form because it feels right, because it's ethical, because it's a signal of our morality. The problem is that it is, as I've said, very difficult to get consistent funding for non-profits, and in particular, you can't get equity investment. So if you want to scale up your organisation, then you don't have that ability to go to investors and say, hey, I need another 500,000 or 2 million to take my great idea forward. Also think about this. We want to have the very best interventions for social impact. Increasingly, they will require the very best data analysts, the very best software engineers. And that's a market which is outside any definition of non-profit or for-profit. It's just a labour market. If we want to be able to employ those people, we have to be able to give them the salaries that they expect to have. They may make some concession of 10% because they're working for a non-profit, but we have to be able to pay them. And so we have to beware whether the non-profit form may prevent us attracting the talent we need to do what we want to do. So there are times when we may want to reach for the for-profit form. And a key question here is, do we think profit is aligned with social value? Let me give you a couple of examples. One example is, we all know that eating meat is a bad thing for climate change because of the gases produced by the cows as they are nurtured and grown. And so if we can get people moving off meat-based products, that's a good thing. So we can create plant-based burgers, etc. And as a meat eater, I can say some of these products are really rather good now. And that is something where profit and social value are entirely aligned. The more of these plant-based burgers we can sell, the more impact we will have on climate change. There is no conflict, and so there's no problem with profit-making form. But there are times when there might be conflict. For instance, take a non-profit, so take a nursery, a kindergarten, that wants to provide services both to people who can pay a normal fee, but also people who can't afford to pay. So that means they will offer subsidies to the people who can't afford to pay. That's not going to be attractive to someone who wants to maximize profit. So if you want to go down that route, then it's likely that you're going to have to be a non-profit organization and find your subsidy from philanthropy or maybe even from government. So there's a phrase we have which is lockstep, and this really guides us as to whether profit-making model is the right one. Is there lockstep between social value and the ability to make profit? But even in a commercial non-profit, we still have the danger of something called mission drift, and that's an important term to remember. It is the idea that our determination to stay sustainable through our market trading gets in the way of our mission. So to give an example, do we start trying to help more those who can afford to pay? Do we start trying to help those who are less expensive to help? Because that makes our organization more sustainable. So whenever we're using a commercial model, we have to bear that in mind. So in sum, using a commercial model, especially a for-profit model, treat that with extreme care, but in some circumstances, it can be really, really valuable in scaling up our impact. The final organizational form I want to draw attention to is cooperatives. So a lot of non-profits can tend to be run by an elite trustee board. That is an area of significant controversy in this field. For-profits are, of course, owned fundamentally by shareholders. What about if we want to, if part of our definition of social value, which we came to earlier, what about if part of that definition is distributing power, ensuring that people who are disadvantaged or in particular difficult situations, they have some sort of say in this organization and in this intervention. In those cases, a cooperative form might be extremely valuable, where each and every person has a membership stake in an organization. And examples of this stretch from parent-owned kindergartens to agricultural cooperatives in sub-Saharan Africa and to nursing care in some circumstances in the UK. Can be a very, very powerful model. Okay, so that is a very short summary of a complex area, choosing your organizational form. The final element I would like to firmly draw your attention to is measuring your impact. How do you know you are making a difference? And again, so often in this field, for the best of intentions, we don't really know, and some big claims are made without any evidence. Frequently, you will open up the annual review of a non-profit or a charity, and it will say, we have reached 10,000 people, or we have run a training program for 500 people a month. That does not say you're making a difference. It does not say you have created impact. It just tells us that you have done some activities. What we're really looking for is outcomes in the first instance, which is that you can say that in some way you have made a difference, but also impact. And that is both that that difference is long-term and that that difference is plainly attributable to your intervention. So to give an example of output, outcomes, and impact, output would be running a training session. An outcome would be that someone has demonstrably learned something from that training session. An impact would be that that learning is actually improving the lives of people on an ongoing basis in some way in our community. And it can be very, very difficult to assess that, but that is our ideal, to try and measure and claim that impact. So how can we go about this? Well, it can be a very complicated field, impact evaluation, but let me give you a few little guide points. The first is build evaluation in right from the start, get it in the theory of change. It's not something that you can do properly after you've put your intervention into practice. Plan it right from the start. The second is have a very clear idea of your definition of impact and what the indicators are going to be of that. Next, beware of the counterfactual. So this means, might this have happened anyway? So to give an example, you are helping people in gangs to stop offending, stop committing crimes, and the crime rate goes down. How do you know that wouldn't have happened anyway? Is there maybe something else going on in the environment that is causing that effect? So always think about, could this have happened anyway? What's the counterfactual? Another question is unintended outcomes. So maybe you can say you have got a very specific impact, but has that actually had a negative impact elsewhere? To give one example, which is controversial on an ongoing basis, is teaching literacy and numeracy in schools and testing. Now, if you have that as a very fixed outcome, which and you hold schools accountable, does that mean that they will stop teaching history, or they'll stop teaching arts, or they will restrict sporting activity for those children because they know that this is the fundamental measure that they have got to achieve? Now, there are sensible and intelligent ways around such a problem, but that is an example of unintended outcomes. You've achieved the impact you've defined, you've made something else worse. And if we truly want to make the world better, then we need to understand our positive impacts and our negative impacts. Measuring impact is tough and it's time consuming. So I just want to emphasize why it is so important. The first is that it's important for you as someone who wants to change the world. You can learn from the process of evaluating. You can learn whether you are making a difference or whether you need to change things. And in that way, you can maximize your social impact. It's also extremely valuable to have this in your pocket when you're communicating to others about how you're making a difference. And that communication will often, obviously, be to obtain more resources for what you are doing. So increasingly, philanthropic foundations and governments are going to look for firm evidence that what you are doing is working. So it's very useful to have a formal evaluation for that purpose. And an even wider benefit is this one. The more we can generate robust evidence of what works, whether it's in education or in the homelessness field or in health, and the more we can share that in a sophisticated and robust manner, the quicker we will achieve the social impact that we all want. So it's some idea of a public good here, that we are creating evidence about what works and indeed what doesn't work in a particular field, so that we can all create social impact together. So that's a very brief summary of how you might measure your impact. There are lots and lots of other questions and issues I could raise about that, but I hope that gives you a feel for it. A final comment on this field. Anyone can be a social entrepreneur and anybody can do this well, but you do have to be robust and you have to exhibit certain qualities which can be quite challenging. So on the one hand, I have stressed that you need to dismiss your knowledge, you need to challenge your values, you need to switch off everything you have taken in and listen. So that requires humility. And yet at the same time, it requires a great deal of confidence too, to push through all these strategies, to create a narrative, to be prepared to stand up and give that narrative to people who will perhaps give you funding. So it's tough. You will require empathy and you will require a thick skin as well, because there will be people who tell you your idea is bad and it's not going to work and to just stop right now. And it will require some skill, because as I hope I've shown in this presentation, there are some particular skills and strategies that you can use in order to give you more of a chance of attaining social impact. Okay, I'm now going to have a look at the Q&A to see if I can answer some of the questions that you have for me. So I'll just have a quick leaf through that for a moment. In the meantime, I'll just raise my final slide, which is we see ourselves as an academic institute, but also as a movement to create social impact with rigor and with humility. So please do join us in whatever way you would like, whether it's by keeping in touch with our newsletter, emailing me, joining our courses, get in touch with us in whatever way you would like. Okay. Yeah, so I will just go down bit by bit. So there's a question from Larry Adams. Is it really ethical for the pump to be patented? That's a difficult word to say, to have a patent. So if our aim is to help a large group of people who are struggling to access life-saving resources, should this be a private good? Should it not be a public good? Absolutely great question. And of course, that goes to questions way beyond play pump. It goes to vaccinations, for instance. You know, why on earth should there be any sort of patent on vaccinations when if only AstraZeneca or Pfizer would release that, we could give it out so easily? A couple of answers to that, I guess. The traditional answer from the capitalist sector is, if you expect people to put research and money into these things, then you have to reward them. And if you don't, this sort of research is not going to happen, and we're not going to have that sort of innovation. So that would be one reason. I guess what I see here is a situation where a social entrepreneur did buy the patent for a social purpose. And now I would imagine if the play pumps have been successful, then they might have made that open source or something like that. So you're absolutely right. This is a very, very important issue, whether how far we do open source these innovations. And it's another argument against the profit-making motivation in this field. So, okay. How can we get, so one of the problems here raised by Sonia Wolf is understanding the social problem is important, but so often interventions and programs don't get put into practice by politicians because yes, they have other priorities. How can we get better at this? Well, there are several answers here. One is that we both need to create these innovations and products, but we also need to campaign. So getting better at campaigning is one example, and there are whole theories about how we might campaign better. Another suggestion is that sometimes we can use the market to scale up innovations and bypass government to do this. And I think another interesting idea is that there are emerging systems where we can provide proof of concept to government. Government is very nervous of taking on innovation for the reasons I've described. The social impact bond, which some of you may have heard of, is one way of creating a system where government isn't involved in the first instance and only has to pay for a service if the service is successful. Now that's obviously very, very attractive to government. So if we can show that, use that sort of system, then maybe we can engage government. But I'm afraid as well, there is a wider question of how our politics is working, which is slightly depressing and beyond this particular session. So an interesting question from Daria, who says, could you operate two organizations at the same time? For example, start with a for-profit organization, and if it's successful, open a parallel non-profit organization with the same mission. Yes. I mean, there are multiple different business models which you could put into practice to get around some of the problems I was discussing. So one example, and quite a simple and perhaps quite crude one, is if you're doing really well, you give a percentage of your profits as a philanthropic grant to your own charitable foundation, which will provide the same services to people who can't afford to buy them. So that will often happen. There's an organization in India, I forget its name, but which does remarkable eye surgery, and it charges the patients who can pay for it, and then uses philanthropy to pay for those who can't pay. You can have non-profit organizations which actually own a for-profit subsidiary. That's also an option. So you could actually provide some kind of service within the for-profit and extract the profit, put it into your non-profit organization, helping people. So there are all sorts of complicated options you could use. Yes, that's right. So there is a fascinating question from Hassan. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. What advice would you give organizations to help them in choosing their social causes in order to optimize positive social impact? Very interesting question. And actually a whole industry is developing around this. And some of you may have heard of the effective altruism movement, which is precisely attempting to do this. It's attempting to construct technical frameworks by which you can measure what is likely to be the most impactful cause you could support. And the sort of criteria that you would look for are how many people are suffering from this, how deep is the impact on them, how likely is it that whatever innovation we have is going to be successful, and how likely is it that anybody else is going to do this as well. And if you put all those sort of questions into a pot, you can come out with an answer about what you should support. In fact, that's extremely difficult to put into practice because the answers to those 4 questions are not immediately visible. And there are some organizations who are doing this, and I admire them for it. But a word of warning, while I have emphasized the importance of effective evaluation and effective impact, it is also the case too that some of our most pressing social problems are not easily measurable. And I do just want to flag that up. And it's something of a heresy in this field to suggest that not always is it possible to fully evaluate. But let me give you one example. I think if we look back at the civil rights movement in the US, it would have been quite difficult to apply a framework where you are measuring incrementally each stage of your success in achieving civil rights. It's possible to think about such a framework, but in the end, I think there's an element of gut instinct in some circumstances that is such a powerful area that we need to put as much funding into it as we can to campaign and create social change. So I think the final answer to that question is see if you can get beyond remedies. So get beyond things which are just helping the symptoms and see if you can get to the causes. So for an example, something like gender inequality. Now we could do various things which will support people who have suffered from gender inequality. But if we want to have to create real impact, maybe what we need to do is campaign for normative change or try and introduce really compelling interventions which will make men think differently and behave differently. Again, you can immediately see that there's a controversial intention here, because are we actually suggesting we shouldn't help people who are suffering from domestic violence? Well, of course not. However, sometimes that is what effective altruism can lead us to believe, that we should really aim for the causes and not the symptoms. So I think we have to do all these things, but some of our impact is in tackling the fundamental causes and not the symptoms. Okay, another question. Yes, a question about campaigning and protesting and concerns about governments being more totalitarian in their approach to the right to protest, and that is certainly true in the UK as it is in other countries. Yep, that is perhaps a slightly different question to the one we're addressing here, but it's a very important one. And again, one of the key things that one could do as an important cause is to actually advocate for a free society, which enables everybody to campaign for social justice and social causes. And there is considerable concern about some of the laws at the moment around civil society. Can I give any book recommendations? I would say read Doing Good Better by William McCaskill. It's a book about effective altruism, so I don't entirely agree with it, but it's an extremely challenging book, which I think you will find extremely useful. I would read, now what's it called? There's a book on, if you want to get into how you understand value, I would look at Martha Nussbaum and her work on capabilities, which is absolutely fascinating and explains how you can bring a human rights perspective into this field. If we are centering user experience for identifying social problems, why not empower them to design and implement solutions on their own? Indeed. I think this is a movement that is beginning to take off in contemporary philanthropy. It is coming in various forms. There's something called participatory grant making, where the end user, whether it's someone who's got a disability or someone in a particular geographical community, is in charge of allocating grants given by a philanthropist. But equally, what we have a growing awareness of is something called trust-based philanthropy, which is where you give the funds to a community and you don't create any requirements about what that community has to do. Now, it's more challenging if you're a social entrepreneur, because part of your whole raison d'etre is that you are the one doing this. So if you are someone who's coming from a privileged background and trying to help a community, how prepared are you to give your autonomy and control to that community? It's a fascinating question. But yes, I agree. Empower the communities. Can the danger of mission drift happen unintentionally, or is it always intentional? How can leaders of non-profits avert this problem? Undoubtedly, it can happen unintentionally. And mission drift is not just about commercial revenues, although so often it is. It's whenever you find yourself moving away from your mission to chase resources. So mission drift could also be if you're chasing after government resources, because that's the only thing that's going to keep your organization alive. But government wants you to help people you don't particularly want to help because they're out of area or something of that kind. Or government wants you to use particular systems which you don't want to use. This is a form of mission drift. So I think the challenge for nonprofit leaders is to be very, very firm about what the mission is, to be very alert to these sorts of things happening, and most of all, to try not to be dependent on single resource streams. Try and have a diversified resource stream, commercial income, multiple philanthropic sources, multiple sources from government, and that is one way that you can insulate yourself against mission drift. There are other complicated organizational systems which can be used to remedy mission drift. For instance, you could have very, very clear barriers between the commercial side and the mission side, so that the two things don't contaminate each other. Okay, a final great question, which I'm afraid I'll have to use as the last one. I must apologize to everybody whose questions I haven't answered, not because they're not good questions, I just haven't got the time, unfortunately. Email me if you'd like to continue the discussion. Should social entrepreneurs really dream dreams, see visions and hear voices, or should they be a realist and keep it real? Well, what I'm hoping is that this session has been something of a transition between those two things. I think we shouldn't accept the status quo. We should try and disrupt. That's what the idea of entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship is about. We should try and repair the unjust equilibrium that we live in. But I hope everything in this session has been about keeping it real, keeping it grounded, keeping it based in rigor and knowledge. Thank you so much for attending this. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you and to receive all your remarkable questions. You can find more about our online courses and our Executive Masters Programme that we run at the Marshall Institute online, and we would love to welcome you to those courses. I hope you very much did enjoy the event. I'd just like to flag up all our upcoming LSE Festival events. In particular, we have another session in this series of around skills tomorrow. It is Professor Andrew Murray and Dr. Orla Linsky, and they're going to be exploring how to navigate data law in today's changing landscape. Many thanks for attending and good luck with all your projects.